get Mike here on this call with me today. So thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. Just a couple admin notes. This will be reported or recorded and shared with you guys. And at the end of this presentation, there'll be another survey for another chance at the drawing for a $75 gift card. So jump in here. We just did a little introduction. We're going to do a high-level overview, cover some of the struggles that Mike and North Dakota have been facing with their current traditional data platform, talk a little bit about what a modern data platform looks like, and kind of the art of the possible as a citizen data developer with automated ETL. So, what exactly is a citizen data developer? You might have heard the term citizen developer, whatever it might be, thrown around a little bit. But really, I would kind of summarize it as in the past, if you wanted to consume data as a business user, if you want to consume data in some sort of way, you would have to wait for your technical team to upload that into a data warehouse. It wasn't really possible for you to create your own data warehouse or for you to create your own ETL process, or even connecting reporting and analytics could be pretty difficult on some disparate data sources. And so kind of with the exponential growth of technology that we've been experiencing, non-technical business users now have the capabilities to do much more of this on their own. There's new apps and cloud services that foster, a drag and drop experience where you still need to know a little bit about your data, but you don't really need to code anything. So when we talk about some of the struggles with the traditional data platform, a lot of clients we talk to, we all have very similar struggles with this architecture. It works very well for what it's capable of doing, but yet we still face a lot of challenges. And so, as I mentioned, we've been working with Mike in North Dakota to implement a more modern approach, data solution in Azure cloud. And Mike's one of the executives we've been working hand in hand with over at the Department of Health. And so, Mike, if you wouldn't mind, could you share some of these challenges you and your team have been facing?
Yeah, I will. So, some of the challenges North Dakota has had. I'll stick with kind of just our response in relation to this COVID pandemic, which really, for public health, which I work with a lot, really brought out some of the shortcomings with a traditional platform or working with flat files. So just like every other public health jurisdiction in the country, we needed to supply data to many stakeholders, internal, external, CDC, and we even had to work with a lot of pop-up operations that came about and tried to aggregate our data out for the public to see. So to start with, in the past, we've had multiple flat files reports in place that are being pulled from a transactional system. Now, in some scenarios, I'm sure people want to have real-time live data from a transactional system, but in a lot of cases that can prove challenging because the data is changing so rapidly. And when you're pulling a flat file report, say I have two analysts that are pulling the same exact flat file report and they pull it, in our case, it was seconds apart. They were then producing different data for our executives. So, one report would say, hey, there's 22 hospitalization cases, but the next report would say there's 24. Well, which one is right? What's our single source of truth there? And really, neither of them were wrong. It's just the data was updating so rapidly. But when you're trying to get, trying to have one single source of truth there, we really want a more stable, modern platform where we're not pulling and working with flat files. And the other thing, pulling and working with the flat files, it did require some manual work, or does require some manual work. Some of it for sure can be automated. But when you're doing something like this every day, the manual work isn't really an efficient use of time when there's a very repeatable task that can be done through a more modern platform like an ETL, ETL processes and things. So then also with a flat file pull, that's not going to scale for us. It's not going to be very scalable when we get into bigger and bigger data. And we would run into problems with even a Excel CSV with 800,000 rows in it. I mean, imagine when we get into the million rows, where we're already at now. We're well past a million, but we're a smaller state. So certainly that's not going to scale for bigger states. And then, of course, it's not business friendly. I want our executives to be able to go out and just get the data. I don't want them to have to wait for our technical teams to run these processes through our little scripts manually to supply them the data. We want it to be automated so they can get out and actually start using the data. Mm-hmm. And not waiting for technical teams to reproduce basic KPIs that they need every day to make a decision, like how many, what was your revenue, what's your number of cases, what's your active case count, things like that in the public health realm. So can you jump to the next slide? So some of the difficulties with the way we were doing things in some cases still have been with these flat files is you really run the risk of exposing PHI, and we don't want to do that. Everybody's trying to do a good job, but now we have all these flat files laying around, and they are in secure locations, but we may not need all that PHI sitting in multiple network locations or on someone's desktop, and that's where we're really kind of lacking data governance around that. And that's what a modern data platform is going to help us do, is get a better data governance around our data and only expose what's really necessary to do your analysis. And obviously to give our business users a lot of flexibility in what they can pull and how they can slice it themselves. Doing a lot of the flat files, there was a lot of user workarounds that we had to put in place, a lot of little hacks to get things the way we wanted and working for them. And then, of course, this requires a heavy dependence on a lot of our technical team's time, IT's time to get everything working every day. And in the past year, we've had to produce this data every day by 8 a.m. so it's ready to publish to the public. And for the first few months, that's not so bad. Getting your team together to do these manual tasks is not so bad. But by month 6, 7, 8, you're pretty exhausted doing tasks that can easily be automated and eliminate that manual work, freeing our technical teams up, to work on more complex issues, right? I don't want our technical teams having to work on something that that can easily be automated. If something can easily be automated, it certainly should be. We shouldn't be, having to have a technical person rerun a script every day or hit a refresh button. We should be able to automate that, and that's the struggles we've had as well as many other states. They've had the same struggles. They're going through the same process, trying to modernize their data needs and data warehousing needs and reporting needs. And like I said, it's not having a data warehouse or a reporting database, or whatever the right term is, it can really be a challenge and cause external stakeholders to really question your numbers when you might be off by one in this report because it was pulled at a different time, because live data is not clean always. It's changing very, very rapidly, especially in the course of a pandemic, and you may have a lag in data getting in. So, that certainly causes causes your data integrity to be questioned sometimes. So a modern data platform will certainly help help us get into a much better place for reporting out numbers and data and statistics, and actually give our executives, the chance to really use the data and make decisions from that data more rapidly than they're able to today.
Yeah, those are all really great points. And you kind of hit on something that I know is easy for me to miss sometimes. And that's kind of just the team, the synergy and all that. If you're having to run these things over and over and over again and all the stressors that come along with that, there's not a lot of growth there. And of course, we all love doing our jobs, growing in it and accomplishing things and solving problems. And that's kind of an inhibitor at that level sometimes.
Exactly. That inhibits you from growing because you're stuck doing. I don't want to say like a mundane task, but kind of like some of those tasks that they get mundane, and then it's inhibiting yourself from growing and being helping your company, your state, your agency move forward.
Right. All right. So we've been talking about this traditional architecture. So I went out and found the oldest and most unattractive looking graphic for this. And there's nothing inherently wrong with this. It's worked very well for a number of years. And I definitely share the sentiment, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But the truth is, there are some painful shortcomings that, Mike just covered. And, technology has grown and it's enabled us to do bigger and better things and to do them faster. And then, not to mention, if we stay with this traditional approach, it doesn't really enable us to pursue the art of the possible. Is kind of a phrase I've been using a lot. And once we get into more of a modern data platform, we're not so worried about, did this ETL process happen right? Did we get all this right? This data source change, we got to go change all the scripts behind it. Now we're looking at these things are all automated. And once we're in the cloud, these services, a lot of plug and play going on. And so now that my data is here, if I want to do some machine learning, I have no idea how to do that. There's a GUI interface where I can start dragging and dropping data and seeing what comes out. And so it's really cool just explore and find new features and say, hey, this might be something we want to invest in. Whereas in the traditional architecture on premise, you're going to need a team that specializes in that to even pull it up and start building it. And now you've invested, weeks, if you're lucky, or months building this out to see if there's an actual business use case to support this or not. So we've been spitting on and on about this modern data platform. What exactly is it? And we're a Microsoft partner, so we mainly deal with Azure. And I find this slide very, very useful. So this kind of shows what you're owning and managing as you grow. So on the far left, we have a traditional IT. This is going to be on-premise, where you're managing your apps, your data, all the operating systems, the servers, the hardware, all those things, networking. You own all of it. You have to have teams to support all of it, and so on. And as you grow, into a IaaS, infrastructure as a service, or PaaS solution, platform as a service, you're managing less and less. And platform as a service, we're looking at most of the services that are in Azure today. As a data guy, I want to own that data. I want to manipulate it. I want to, all those things. I don't want to really give that up. Whereas software as a service is going to be like Office 365 or Dynamics or things like that, where you're interfacing with it, but everything's kind of managed externally without you inputting anything. And so this graphic, I know at first glance, it's very complex. It can seem overwhelming, and because there's a lot going on here. And what I really want to show here is that Azure is really good about modularity, and everything's kind of like Legos. So once you get your data into the cloud, last time I checked, there's over 300 Azure services, which I think they've been slimming down a little bit. And most of these all play extremely nice together. Again, it's plug and play, and you can start doing all these things. Whereas before, you'd have a team build that application out, spend months and years and crazy amounts of budget. And so, really, there is a lot going on here, but what it all boils down to is kind of the same traditional set of phases. We have our data sources on the left. We have some kind of ETL processes and orchestration to ingest this data. And then, we need to store it somewhere. If you're doing any kind of statistical modeling or machine learning or things like that, there's a prep and train phase here. And then the model and serve phase is when we're building out our dimensional models in the data warehouse, or say a semantic model in analysis services or Power BI Premium. And that's kind of what your apps, how, everything is focused on that model in the data warehouse or the semantic layer in Power BI. All your apps and analytics are running off of that. And particularly for North Dakota, we kind of slimmed it down to these Azure cloud services. So we have multiple different sources of data, whether it's from Dynamics, whether it's from some old, on-premise systems, or a SQL Server or Oracle or whatever. And we're importing that using Data Factory into a data lake, this is all the load ingest, and that data lake is storing all this for us. And then, of course, we eventually push all this into a dimensional model in Azure Synapse, is the new data warehouse 2.0. You might even argue 3.0 in this instance. And then, of course, in our serve, we have Power BI Premium. And this is what all these metrics are running from. And so once we're at this level, again, if it takes time, if a business wants to bring in and incorporate a data set and persist that historical data and so forth, it takes a little time, even in the modern data platform, even though it's less time, to get that into the dimensional warehouse. But there's all sorts of things we can do here, like Power BI. We can point that directly to Azure Data Lake. And so if a business wants to see, is this new data set even worth, our technical team's time to pull in and do all that to persist it, let's look at it first, make sure this is something we actually want to implement. Let's see, I'll jump over. We got 10 minutes left. So we're jumping into automated ETL. So this is where the whole citizen data developer really starts coming into play. A lot of these tools in the cloud, foster that drag and drop experience to where you don't have to write all these scripts of code to get something into a data warehouse or to make an automated ETL process. And so we're going to cover a couple of those services and tools that we often implement. But one thing I wanted to touch on, and no doubt somebody before has probably used this slide, but we found a study, and I think it was from MIT Sloan School of Management, and they found that often we think as technology is the limiting factor. We don't have the latest and greatest. It's kind of not allowing us to do all these things. This is the bane of our existence. And what MIT found is over 90% of the time, the hurdle to becoming, the hurdle for a company to incorporate data-driven decision-making, not over 90% of the time was people and processes. And so what we really want to do is kind of get that human element out of there. And as Mike kind of expressed, a big problem is a single source of truth or exposing PHI and things like that. So on the left-hand side, we got this, traditional approach. I think we've all been around long enough to where we've seen, Excels on Excels on Excels on Excels, all these spreadsheets. And, if you have a team using all these sheets, what's the most consistent, what's up to date? If your laptop gets stolen, what PHI could have just been exposed, what kind of putting out fires you got to do, spending hundreds of thousands of dollars just in case it gets exposed. We've had clients where that's run into. And so kind of the easiest solution is to automate all this, get that human element out of there. And so not only are we limiting our risk, but we're also automating these processes so we can focus on bigger and better things like Mike was talking about. So some of those tools we use, Azure Data Factory, If you're familiar with SSIS, a lot of this will look very similar. And again, this is an overly complex image I'm showing here. And it kind of shows a parent-child relationship, how you can have one ETL pipeline call another one, but each one of these activities, a non-technical person can just drag and drop and select what data they want to make all these data movements or data wrangling or all this stuff happening. You don't have to write any scripts. You definitely can. There's that ability to if you need to do something crazy complex. But say, for instance, if Mike wanted to bring in an on-premise data source, a new one into the cloud, and just be able to look at it, he could create one of these little boxes as an activity, a copy activity, where he just points it at this database, bring over this information, and put it into the cloud, in this place. And so Data Factory makes it very, very simple for a non-technical user to do this. And then, of course, what this graph really shows, excuse me, I need to get your, is the orchestration behind it. So we can orchestrate all this out. One pipeline can execute this. If this or this happens, you can make it as simple or as complex as you want. And we can also automate this ETL. We can run on a schedule. It can be every third Sunday of, a red moon or something. And so it just gets the human element out there. It's in the secure cloud environment. And we can even lock these down where people can't actually see the data until it's aggregated to a point where they consume it in Power BI or something like that. And then, of course, we've been talking about Power BI a lot. These are a couple, we call these dashboards. And although this might not be the color scheme I would pick, I think I picked these two visualizations because it kind of shows the simplicity of Power BI. So once we make a dimensional model or semantic layer, everything is split out ahead of time. So all the calculations, all the measures, all those things are already calculated ahead of time. So you don't actually have to do any of that. These are all split up into that far right. So if you look on the left visualization under fields, that far right column, if I'm a business user and I want to see, what sales, a product had in this region of the world at this point in time, all those are split out into those different folders. So I know for my product, I look in the product folder, sales folder, the date folder, and like a geographical folder. And then I just start pulling those measures, just dragging and dropping. Where that visualization pane is kind of in the middle, I choose what visualization I want to use. It can be a map, it can be a bar graph, it can be a line graph. There's tons of different visualizations there. You just choose which one it is, and then you just drag your measures to it, and it automatically makes this for you. So it's very, very fast, very simple to use, and easy to just go and explore data and find new measures, find new problems worth solving. So I know we kind of ran through that very, very quickly. I haven't been able to see the chat to see if there's any questions this far, but yeah, do we have any questions or Mike, did I miss anything?
No, the nice push you made there, Daryl, though, was to, about aggregating the data before it gets to BI is extremely, I don't want that point to be lost because that is important because you can inadvertently, expose PHI or sensitive data. And that's what's nice about aggregating down to a level in your automated warehouse process that we could set up, right? So.
Yeah, there's all sorts of there's all different ways to slice and dice. And it's really a function of, what are the needs of the business and what is our skill set? So if we have guys that are good in these technologies, let's take advantage of that. And really it's a client by client scenario. We kind of look sometimes, maybe oftentimes we have a hybrid scenario to where, we have a limited budget, we have this goal in mind. Some things are worth, if they're working right on premise, let's continue working that. We can, push that to the cloud and then focus on only net new activities, which a lot of that is your case in North Dakota. But yeah, once we start getting these automated ETL process, it puts it in, a data lake or something like that, and we aggregate it, get rid of all the granular PHI details and all that. Then we can share it with whoever we want. It makes it a very easy process. And Mike, even you could go in there and do some of these things.
This is the room moderator. There are currently no questions in the chat. Chat is still open for questions, though. Feel free to drop your questions.
All right. Thank you, Amanda.
I've got a question. I'm curious, how has the North Dakota implementation, has that been noticed by other departments other than health? And has there been any interest to move it across other areas?
Mike, I can let you start with that. I can obviously give my opinion, but it's a little biased.
So are you referring to just in the state itself, or
well, yeah, to see if there's a groundswell for this kind of data platform.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yes, I've seen that from other agencies looking at kind of, they want to update their data platforms as well, and across the state agency, yes, I see that happening, especially when we're doing some neat stuff. I've also seen it across the country now as well. Washington State, I work with them, and they're moving to a modern data platform. They took their system and are doing, getting it up to a more modern data platform so they can more easily report their statistics and numbers. So, yep.
And I know one of the initial things that connected us in North Dakota was, there's a disproportionate amount of baby boomers about to retire. And North Dakota in particular has some really, really old mainframe systems that basically some of these guys can't retire because they're the only ones who know how to work it still. And so some of those solutions we're implementing is automating that ETL process, so they can go live a nice, happy retirement.
We have one question in the chat.
Yeah.
How do you make sure that non-data trained people don't use data to make a case for something that is statistically incorrect? The whole causation versus correlation, for example.